Today I am mostly be cutting a feather pattern, and it's off to the races with a stack of 20 cut into sticks to make 120, cut into 5 to make 600, and then restack to 10 to make 6,000. And here's my stack of 10, nice and hot. I want the feather to be slightly off centre, so I'm just taking my time here, just making sure it's in the dead right place, not too much off centre, just exactly off centre, maybe by 2mm, something like that, because I want a little bit more feather towards the bottom of the blade, which you will kind of see in the eventual billet. So I want the cut running slightly higher on the bar. I have tried cutting with an axe and I have tried cutting on the press, and I much prefer cutting on with an axe. It's more controllable and you don't end up in a mess, and you don't end up with your axe stuck in the billet. And it only takes 3 or 4 heats usually to do this, so it's not too bad. There it is. There you can see the stack of 10 there as well. So there's that. There's the start. And I'm not going to go too mad here on this second cut. I'm just establishing the cut really. When it gets to the third heat, I'll really be able to belt this through. It's just a matter of seating the axe into the billet really, and once the axe is properly seated, it doesn't move the billet around the anvil when you're hitting it. It's important also to get your axe ground really evenly as you can on each side, so to the bevel, because if the bevel's slightly off on one side, it'll make the axe kind of run sideways and not straight down the billet, which is, you want it straight down the centre of the billet and not swinging off to one side. I use no borax, by the way, to get these 6,000 layers together so far. I'm going to put a bit of borax in now, because I don't want that cut getting scale inside it, because when I come to forge it back together, that will be an utter nightmare. It won't be a nightmare, but you will see the scale on the final billet. You'll be able to see where that scale was welded together, and it'll kind of show up as a whitish grey line in the middle of the feather. So it's the first time I've used borax on this feather as well. You can see here I'm on the third heat now, and you can really go to town on this. You can really hit it now. If you rock the axe when you're cutting, so you cut a little bit at the front, a little bit at the back, and then chop the centre, so rocking it from front to back, it really makes it a lot easier. The axe is not sharp, it's got an ever so slight rounded edge on it, because I want it to push the layers down rather than simply cutting them. And I'll apply some more borax now as well, because that is in danger of scaling up now as it's reheated. Here we go, cut 4. I think this is it. Yeah, this is the last heat needed, and there'll be no problem pushing this axe through here now. I made this cutting axe with a leaf spring and welded a steel handle on it, so it's really robust, and it's slim so that it doesn't push the billet too far apart. It cuts really nice. I heat treated it and tempered it as well, but cutting these things ruins that heat treat anyway. Yeah, it's looking really good, really cool, really cool. You can just see now that the left hand side is slightly wider than the right. It's been boraxed. I'll just tap anything loose out of there by banging it on the anvil, and I'll just gently push it together at this stage. I'm not trying to weld it, I'm just trying to push them two pieces back together again, and just gently force any borax out that's left in that weld. Quite important to try and get the billet parallel here as well, and I'll just tap down on them ends, because when you cut feathers it does ridge up slightly in the centre. I'll do 3 heats on this to make this forge weld good. This is the second one, and again I'll give it some stick now to get that forge weld set. And this will be the last heat, where we really just make sure that weld is set. Again, trying to keep the billet parallel so it's not tapering. I'm not bothered at this stage about closing the front down or bringing the front to a point on this particular stack. I'm actually going to cut the front in so it doesn't distort the pattern. I'll usually bring that to a point on a feather, but this is such a high layer count that I want to keep that layer and that appearance intact on the front. And I'll just push that ridging down so I can make sure it's welded. And there it is. The weld looks pretty good. So I've drawn it out, and this is what I've got. Quite happy with that. Indeed. Very happy with it. The welds are all beautiful. It did delaminate slightly, a couple of them, whilst I was drawing out, but I managed to push them back together. And this is where I'm just going to draw the tip in, because it would distort. As you can see on the front there, where I've been just beating down on the front a little bit, it has distorted the pattern, and I don't want that to happen in this final appearance. So I'm just going to cut that bit off. And then also when I come to forge this out, I know exactly where the centre of the feather line is, which is very important when you start forging out to shape. So the billet is 5 inches long, and there's more than enough to get a big knife out of that. And initially what I planned to do was forge this billet out thicker so I could cut it in half down its length and get 2 knives. This feather I've just done came out of a 3cm square, so that's what that was drawn out from, and that's an 8-inch knife. So I've got approximately 3 to 4 times that on this bar, so I'm only going to have to double the length of that bar, and you can obviously see it's not going to distort that pattern too much on the new bar. So I wanted it thicker, this second bar, because I wanted to cut it down the centre to get 2 knives out of it, but those 2 little delaminations meant I had to carry on doing more forging work, which eventually ended up the billet being slimmer than I wanted it to. And there was nothing I could do about it at that stage. I had to keep forging it down to set them welds again. So I don't know what to do now. I don't think there's enough steel here to cut it down the centre on that line to get 2 knives. They'd have to be 2 very thin chef knives. I don't want to risk that. I could cut it one slightly thicker than the other, but it would be too thin to get rid of decarb and scale and everything. The other option is to forge out an integral bolster on this. Just leave that fat and draw out a tang on it and put a little integral on, do say a chef knife or something, but I don't really want to do that. So the other option is, do I just turn this into a Bowie knife? I really don't know. I was sat here looking at this for an hour at one point. I'm going to have to come up with the right decision of what I'm going to do. It's worth leaving it for a day or 2 while I think about it. So in the meantime, on my bench I've got another stack there, 20 in each stack, and I've also got another bar there with a 20 stack. So whilst I'm thinking about that feather, I think I'm going to make a chisel. So what I did, that stack of 7 20s on the bench, I forged them down to 140 layers. I cut a piece off, which is there, and I've tacked it to 2 pieces of 01 tool steel, 2 pieces of 4mm tool steel, and I'm going to forge this out now into a mortise chisel, an 1.25 inch mortise chisel to be precise. First one I've made, so this will be the next video. You can see how I get on with this. I really still don't know what to do with that feather pattern. I haven't got a clue whether to cut it in half or to make a knife. I'm pretty much going towards making a Bowie knife out of it. What do you think, guys? Thanks to my patrons. Thanks all for watching, fellas. I'll see you quite soon.